Welcome to Season 4. Whoa! My first time ever. This might be one of my little resource hives. Just awesome. All right, so there it was, 2019, year 4 of beekeeping. Boom. The years just keep getting better. So this year was amazing. I'm gonna take you through an overview of all the stuff that I learned this year in and around the bee yard. I'm also gonna take you through my 2020 goals and tell you kind of what I have in store for next year. 1 year ago, I stood right over there and I explained my goals for 2019. And I'm gonna start off by telling you what those were and then go through what I accomplished and what I didn't accomplish. We have a dearth problem here on the property. The goal this year is to plant this field with as many nectar producing flowers as I can and get that in the ground as early as possible. Now I know that not all 12 colonies that I have are going to survive. We're going to come out of the winter with maybe 6, maybe 8, who knows how many hives. The ones that make it, I want to try immediately to build up as fast as possible to catch that spring flow, and then not focus on expanding the bee yard, but focus on building those hives to be as strong as possible to take advantage of the flowers that we do have. So that is the second goal of 2019, is to just go for quality over quantity, go for strength over just expanding to 20 hives. And that leads me into the third goal of this year, which is to try and use my resource hives as actual resource hives. Split the hives into those resource hives and then just let them continually produce brood for the big hives, the production hives, and let them just live as small NUCS indefinitely. So I've had this goal of overwintering a nuke, and I've never done it before. I've tried it once, it wasn't successful, but I want to try and have a lot of NUCS that will go over the winter, so I could start out in 2020 springtime with a whole bunch of really powerful little NUCS that I can then turn into full-size hives, because by then my full-size hives are going to be probably needing to be refreshed. So as far as the flowers go, 1 year ago I planted 2,000 grape hyacinth and crocus bulbs along this strip here, and they went in the ground. I did everything that I thought you do, and we had about maybe 5 or 10 crocus bulbs come up and maybe the same grape hyacinth bulbs. So basically those were a bust. I don't know what happened. Maybe the mice got them, maybe we just had a really wet spring and they rotted or something, but that was kind of a waste of time and money. So up here in the back 2 acres, I did about ½ an acre of buckwheat, ½ an acre of Phacelia, which was a highly recommended plant from the comments last year. Then I did more buckwheat, sunflowers, and a wildflower mix. Unfortunately, the Phacelia we got about 3 flowers, like hardly any grew. So about ½ an acre of seed. It was pretty expensive too, and it just was a bust. The buckwheat continues to grow really well here. Unfortunately, this year, the deer found the buckwheat and they just gorged on it. So there was a lot of buckwheat that did come up, but more than half of it got eaten by deer. The deer also ate literally every single sunflower. They just mowed them down 6 inches high. As they grew up, they just kept mowing them down. So no sunflowers up here. And the wildflower mix did okay, but I think I planted it a little too late, and then it wasn't really flowering until it got cold. So some fails, some wins. I'm learning. I'm taking all this stuff into account, and I'm going to try again next year. So the huge win this year for flowers was milkweed. Unbelievable. About 4 years ago, I stopped mowing milkweed anywhere around the property. We always used to get a few sprouts here and there, and it wound up just getting mowed down as I mowed the field. But 4 years ago, I stopped mowing my milkweed. Every time I saw a milkweed plant come up, I would just mow around it, let it grow. And those little plants that came up started spreading and spreading, and now I have all these little islands of milkweed. You can see here, it's like 30 feet around, and it's just a little pod of milkweed. Over there's another one, then there's another one here, and what happens is they just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then they spread with the seed. We had pretty solid milkweed right next to the bee yard because I've been just throwing seeds over there for the last couple years, and the bees absolutely love it. It comes up right in the middle of the summer, and we had just the right amount of water this year, and the bees went nuts for it. So milkweed, awesome. The other thing about milkweed is it's basically the only thing that monarch butterflies survive on. So we saw more monarch butterflies this year than I've ever seen. They were just everywhere. And I think that has to do with the fact that we just stopped mowing our milkweed. So don't mow your milkweed, let it grow. All right, on to the bees. Now the huge win for 2019 was so many of my hives making it through last winter. 11 out of my 12 hives made it through. One hive died. It was a weak hive going into winter. I was expecting about half my hives to die. I was hoping for 6 hives to come out alive. We got 11 hives through the winter, which is gigantic. I don't know if it was just dumb luck or if it was something that I did, but whatever it was, I repeated everything I did last year, again this year with one minor modification, but basically the hives are all just as they were a year ago, hoping for the same results. The other thing I did this year was expand to the final row of the bee yard. We now have 4 rows for colonies to sit on. And basically we're at capacity right now. When I built this bee yard, I expected it would hold about 20 colonies, and that's pretty much where we are. So I'm not gonna ever be a big commercial beekeeper. That is not the plan. I don't want 50 hives, I don't want 100 hives. I am a part-timer. With everything else I have going on around here with my life, this is manageable. So I can probably fit a couple more in here if I had to, but 15 to 20 colonies is where I wanna be, and that's where we are. With our weather and my ability, I know we're gonna have some losses every year, and with the bees that I have, the ones that make it will help to build back up and maintain around this level. So that's where we are. It's a good place to be. So one of my big goals this year was to build my big hives as strong as possible. I didn't want to just split and try and get lots of hives. I wanted to make the hives that were already strong as they could be. So this year I tried single deep brood boxes, and it turned out to be incredible. In the past, I've put all my hives as double deeps because I heard you needed double deeps to get through a winter. Last winter, my bees went through the winter with a single deep and a medium. So I proved that you didn't need 2 deeps to get through the winter. So this year I just tried single deeps, queen excluder on all the hives, and then medium supers above. And I noticed the queens packed those brood boxes way better than they've ever packed a double deep. So in the past I noticed with the double deeps, the queens didn't really lay in a nice tight pattern. They were all over the 2 boxes, up and down, and sometimes they'd lay low and then high, and then sometimes they'd lay across diagonally, and it just kind of got a little weird in the boxes, and it got hard to inspect. So with the single deep, they're constricted to just 8 frames, and they would just pack them. There'd be like a frame of pollen and then brood right across. And then the bees working the mediums above were drawing out so much comb. It was great. Now, I don't know if it was just this year, because I know a lot of people had good years with honey this year around me, but the difference between previous year's honey and this year's honey was staggering. I think the single deeps did affect where the bees put their honey and how they stored it and how they worked. So I'm definitely doing this again next year. No more double deeps, except the Russians. The Russians are still in double deeps, and they got that packed. I'm just gonna let them keep going. But everyone else, single deeps, queen excluder, mediums on top. So I know you're gonna ask about swarming and single deeps. Yes, the Adrian colony was my swarm colony this year. They did swarm at least 2, maybe 3 times this year, and they were in a single deep. I don't know if it was because of the single deep or if they were just a swarmy hive, but yeah, that was a problem. Everybody else, though, aside from the Carniolans, were fine. The Carniolans swarmed at the very end of the season, but they were awesome the whole season. They were the monster hive of the year. The queen seemed happy in there all summer. Into the fall, they had more supers on than any other hive, and they finally swarmed at the end of the year when I wasn't looking at them. So had I been inspecting that at the time, I probably would have stopped that swarm, but I just missed it. So overall, single deeps were a huge success, and I know now kind of what to look for with swarming and also when to look for swarming, which is late June for us and sort of late August, early September. Either way, I'm definitely doing it again. And speaking of swarms, this is my 4th year of beekeeping, and it's the first year I ever saw a swarm. I saw my very first swarm ever over in an apple tree over there, and I got them out of the tree I got them into a box and I caught a swarm. It was my first time ever. So about a month later, I saw another swarm in progress. I don't know exactly which hive they were coming from at the time, but they were swirling around the bee yard. I watched them coalesce on that little arborvitae tree over there. Then I went down and I took a break and waited about an hour, got my gear, came back up here, and they were already gone. So I missed catching them, but I saw them happen. About a month after that, I saw another swarm fly right by the bee yard. They just flew right by. I saw them come from over there. I heard them go by. They kept going. They went up and over that line of trees over there. And it was pretty magical to see a swarm of bees kind of floating past the bee yard, and just the noise of it was awesome. So I don't think they were my bees because I didn't notice anyone missing after that happened, but it was really, really cool to see that happen. So then a couple weeks after that, on the exact same tree the other swarm landed on, I saw another swarm, and I was able to catch that swarm and put them into this little box. So I did successfully catch 2 swarms this year. I saw 4 swarms, and I think one of those was not my bees. So one of my goals next year is just put 6 or 7 swarm traps all around the bee yard. A couple in the apple orchard, a couple amongst the arborvitae trees, because every swarm I've seen has been right here, and this is where they go. They either go to the apple trees or the arborvitaes. So if I have traps there, hopefully they'll just get lured right into a new box. Another goal this year was to use my resource hives as resource hives, because in previous year I used my resource hives as sort of incubators. I was just splitting into the hives and then taking the bees out once they filled up 8 frames and making a full hive. Early this year I made 4 splits that were just walkaway splits from my big hives into 4 of these NUCS spaces. Mid-year I took splits from my big hives and I introduced queens around July, mid-July. I have a lot of luck with walkaway splits and they did really well. Those 4 hives built up nicely and they were full colonies kind of bulging out of the resource hives by mid-year. The other 4 I took splits around mid-July and I introduced purchased queens into those 4. So I wound up having 8 resource hives by August, and they were all growing. 4 of them were big, 4 were kind of little. So all year long, whenever I had weak hives or saw a hive that needed a little boost, I was taking brood out of the bigger resource hives and dropping it into other colonies. So 2 times I actually used resource hive frames to re-queen a hive, basically put a frame of eggs from a resource hive into a big hive and let the big hive make a new queen. So I took a lot out of these resource hives this year, which was really nice to just have that backup to put into the bigger hives that were relatively weak and build them up to hopefully increase production. So one thing I learned this year was the early splits I made early in the year from the large hives that were walkaway splits did far better than the hives that I split mid-season and then introduced queens in July. Now I don't know if it was the queens that I introduced or if it was just the timing of it, but my splits, my walkaway splits from my bees were way, way stronger than the July splits I made with the introduced queens. So resource hives, definitely a success, definitely good to have throughout the season. My stretch goal last year was to overwinter NUCS. I've never been able to keep a nuke alive over the winter, so I'm trying this year. I wrapped up 4 of these colonies this year. That's 8 NUCS. Those 2 over there, the first 2, looked pretty full and pretty packed, and they have a lot of resources and a lot of bees. These here were the ones where I introduced queens, and I don't know, they're probably not going to make it, so I'm prepared for that. If they don't make it, I'm going to take stock of what happened, try and learn and try and figure out a better way to do it for the next year, because I do eventually want to learn how to overwinter NUCS so that I have them in the springtime to replace other losses. But this year, I'm expecting losses. If they all go, the silver lining is all these hives are filled with drawn comb and resources. So if we lose the bees, their work will not go wasted. It will be very easy to take a split from another survivor hive, drop them in here with hives that are filled with resources and drawn comb, and they were going to build right up really fast. So the resource hives are a success already, and if they make it, they make it. If they don't, we'll move on. It is so cold and windy. I'm shooting this on the cold. Oh my. Okay, wrapping up the year. We went into winter with 13 colonies and 8 nukes. Of those 13 colonies, 2 of them were caught swarms. Of the nukes, 4 are very strong and 4 are kind of weak. So I don't know what's going to happen. Of the 13 colonies that went in, including the nukes, everyone looks very strong. So it's promising. You know, last year we had a lot of success. 11 of 12 hives made it. I never know what's going to happen. I'm making no predictions, no guarantees. Whoever makes it, makes it. Whoever doesn't, we will rebuild. We also finished the year with just over 400 pounds of honey, which is just really unexpected and really unbelievable. It's so much honey that we're not even prepared to bottle it or sell it. We have to figure that out, and we're going to figure it out because I want to make sure it's available to people who want it, but we don't really know what to do with it all, so we're working on that. Stay tuned. This is why I wrap my hives in the winter. It's this wind. So overall, I think I totally met all of the goals that I had for this year with the building up of the hives, the resource hives, the planting, and the stretch goal of trying to overwinter nukes is an attempt. We're trying it out. We'll see what happens. So goals for 2020, number 1, I want to maintain my strongest hives. This year, I definitely learned the difference between a strong hive and a weak hive. In the past, all my hives were kind of treated about the same, and they all kind of maintained themselves, and they were kind of all around the same level. And this year, we had some strong hives and we had some kind of stagnant hives. So what I want to do this year is really focus on the stronger hives, the ones that are weaker. Those queens are getting into their 3rd year next year if they make it over the winter. If they need to be requeened, I'm going to requeen them with my strongest hive stock. Which brings me to the second goal, which is propagating the best hives. My Carniolan hives, my Cornelia hive, my Balboa hive. I want to take the strongest hives I have and make lots of walkaway splits early in the year and try and propagate my own queens. I have a lot of hives in here that I really like. I have some nice strong hives, and I want to take those hives and clone them and make more of those hives. So that's kind of goal number 2, is using my stock to propagate to make new hives. Ultimately, I would love to be able to just maintain all of my hives with my own bees. I got enough colonies in here now. I may once in a while bring in a queen or something, but I don't think I need to buy bees anymore if I have strong colonies like I do, and I can keep propagating them. And I've also learned that if I am going to get new queens, I'm going to get Carniolans. Absolutely the best hive I had all last year. And that queen was 2 years old, and she was awesome. So if I do have to buy queens, I'm buying Carniolans. Number 3, I'm going to continue using all the resource hives. I'm going to take stock of what survives over the winter. If any of them survive, I'm going to see what worked, see why they survived, and then hopefully repeat that for the next year. The ones that die, I'm going to really study and try and figure out why they died so I can avoid doing that in the future. But I really, really want to have that bank of resource hives in the back of the bee yard. They're always there, and I really want to try and get them to overwinter. So that's kind of my 3rd big goal of the year next year, is to figure out those nukes. I kind of had success this year, but I really want to streamline it, and I really want to get successful at that next year. So that wraps up 4 years of beekeeping for me. I just cannot believe it's been 4 years. It just has flown by. I've learned so much, and I don't think I do this enough, but I want to say thank you to you guys for watching, for enabling me to do this. Your comments and your support have made me the beekeeper that I am now. I say this every year, but I would not be where I am now without your comments and without your help. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, one other thing. This isn't the last video of the year. I've got 2 more videos coming up. One in about a week. It's a little different than what I usually post, but I thought it was kind of cool, and I'm just going to put it up online. And there's 1 more video coming at the end of the year. Stay tuned.